Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to unpack a really holistic toolkit designed to elevate your workplace communication from merely, competent to truly captivating. Because look, we all know how to talk, right? And we all know how to act professional. But there is a massive difference between just delivering information and actually inspiring an audience or a colleague. So today we're pulling together some brilliant insights from Franklin Covey, Toastmasters International, Vocate Futures, and a few others to help you master literally every single layer of your communication. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's dive into this super provocative question from Stacking Days. Because honestly, hiding behind a polished professional wall might just be the very thing keeping you stuck as a transactional resource rather than being seen as a strategic partner. We all do it. We build this invisible barrier to look competent and keep ourselves safe. But the reality? Well, Stacking Days shared a story about a senior leader at a media company who recently realized that by just keeping her head down, delivering great work, and answering questions directly, she was actually alienating her executive stakeholders. She wasn't building trust at all. She was just processing transactions. So if you really want to accelerate your career, we have to look at how you communicate from the ground up. And here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We're taking a layered approach here, starting with structuring your message, moving to the power of your delivery, mastering those nonverbal cues, building authentic connections, and finally wrapping up with the art of listening. All right, let's jump right into section 1, structuring your message. It's all about prioritizing the essential. So, clarity is what Franklin Covey actually refers to as a secret superpower, one that completely eliminates guesswork and gets teams perfectly aligned. In a world that is just completely saturated with information, vague or overly complex communication just leads to people tuning out. You really have to learn how to prioritize the essential and simplify your language. And a great way to do that is using the Vocate Futures Prep method. It's this rapid 4-step formula that you can pull out in high-stakes meetings to transform, rambling, disconnected thoughts into a tight, authoritative response. Think about it like this. First, you state your point clearly. Second, you provide your reason. Ideally, you're aiming for about 3 strong supporting arguments here. Third, you share an example to bring that reasoning to life. Like if you're explaining why you prefer coffee over tea, you don't just say it tastes good. You talk about how the aroma reminds you of childhood Saturday mornings. It makes it real. And finally, you restate your point to lock it all in. It's just a brilliant way to balance hard logic with relatable storytelling. Moving on to section 2, the power of delivery. So once you have that clear structure, we really need to look at your physical delivery. Because having a well-crafted message is honestly only half the battle. If your delivery is completely flat, that brilliant structure of yours just won't matter. Toastmasters reminds us that a truly compelling speaker relies heavily on vocal variety, meaning they use silence and sound to build tension and add serious impact. A great speaker makes you forget where you even are. They don't just lean on their words, they use their voice as an instrument to make every single syllable land exactly as they intended. The crucial takeaway here is how you manipulate these 4 specific elements. I could speed up dramatically right now to show you excitement about pace, or I could use a purposeful stage whisper to demonstrate volume. See what I mean? Pitch prevents you from sounding totally monotone by moving up and down your natural vocal range. Tone reveals the actual emotion behind your words, letting people know whether you're joyful, secretive, or maybe even terrified. Volume ensures you're actually heard, of course, but it can also be dropped strategically to draw people in. And pace? Well, that keeps your audience actively engaged and stops them from tuning out a slow, plodding delivery. Mastering these 4 things is what transforms you from just a talker into a true performer. All right, section 3, mastering nonverbal cues. Let's talk about the silent signals. Moving beyond just the voice, we have to examine the silent signals we're putting out there. EduBirdie highlights some wild data showing that up to 93% of communication effectiveness can be determined by nonverbal cues, things like facial expressions, your posture, your gestures. Listen, when your words say one thing, but your body says another, people will believe your body every single time. And this brings us to a really vital balancing act. Dominant nonverbal cues, like holding direct eye contact, project immense confidence. Think of Steve Jobs, famously using that steady gaze and expansive hand gestures to project this visionary authority. That's the benefit side. But the risk is that if you overuse that dominance without any empathy, you run the severe risk of alienating your peers. It can come off as arrogant or intimidating. You have to constantly read the room. If the person across from you is leaning back with their arms crossed, they're probably feeling defensive. You've got to learn to modulate those dominant cues with genuine approachability. Which brings us to section 4, building authentic connections. Time to break down those professional walls. Okay, let's dive into the highest layer of mastery here, where we learn how to intentionally break down that safe professional wall we talked about earlier so we can build actual, real trust. We've structured the message, we've tuned the voice, we've aligned the body. So, how do we actually connect with a human being sitting across from us? Well, Stacking Days solves that transactional resource problem by using the feelings wheel and this specific, highly intentional framework. It allows you to strategically engineer your interactions instead of just reacting to them as they happen. Instead of just crossing your fingers and hoping a meeting goes well, you literally fill in the blanks. I want my executive to feel optimistic about our working relationship in order to give me more strategic autonomy. Do you see how powerful that is? It moves you from being a passive participant to an active designer of your own relationships. And a truly fantastic tool for this is the 3-step conversational threading technique. What's cool about this is it creates a totally natural bridge to authentic connection without ever forcing you to overshare. Step 1, you ask an open-ended question, maybe something simple about their recent vacation. Step 2, you actually listen, and then ask a follow-up based on their answer, like, oh wow, what made you choose Cabo? And finally, step 3, you affirm what they said and share a brief, like 30-second personal perspective, maybe mentioning your own trip to the Bahamas. It creates this incredibly natural rapport. It proves you're actually listening to them, and it allows you to be seen as a multidimensional, relatable person, not just another worker bee. And finally, Section 5, the art of listening. This is the bedrock of it all. Because at the end of the day, listening is the absolute bedrock for every single technique we've discussed in this explainer. Think about it. You literally cannot structure a relevant message, adapt your nonverbal cues, or thread a conversation if you aren't actually absorbing what the other person is communicating. The core Franklin Covey philosophy here is that active listening requires you to overcome your own internal distractions and preconceived notions so you can deeply engage with the emotions behind a message. If we're being honest, most of us just wait for our turn to speak, right? We're sitting there formulating our next prep response while the other person is still talking. But true active listening means giving your full, undivided attention, reflecting on what is being said, and acknowledging the feelings of the speaker before you ever rush in to provide a solution. So the absolutely crucial point I want you to take away from this entire toolkit is intentionality. And I want to leave you with one question to really challenge how you apply structure, delivery, and authenticity to your very next conversation. Take a moment right now and ask yourself, what emotion will you design for your next interaction? Seriously, whether you are prepping for a massive presentation, managing your vocal tone on a Zoom call, or just deciding to be a little more vulnerable in one-on-one, none of it should happen by accident. You have the tools now. It's time to step out from behind that professional wall and become truly captivating. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.